the last thing I want to say is I'm really, really lucky because I'm going to get on an 8-hour bus ride, and I'm going to arrive in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'm going to walk into my house. I'm going to walk upstairs. I'm going to walk into 2 pink rooms, okay, with a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old laying in that pink room, with a bunch of teddy bears laying in that room. I'm going to give them the biggest hug and the biggest kiss I've ever given them. And there's 20 families in Newport, Connecticut that are walking into a pink room with a bunch of teddy bears with nobody laying in those beds. And it's tragic. And I don't know what needs to be done. I'm not smart enough to know what needs to be done. Okay? I know this country's got issues. Is it a gun issue? Is it a mental illness issue? Or is it a society that has lost the understanding that decent human values are important? And our leaders, I didn't vote for President Obama, okay? But you know what? He's my president now. He's my leader. I need him to step up, okay? Mr. Boehner, the Speaker of the House, he's a Xavier guy. He's a Cincinnati guy, okay? He needs to step up. Parents, teachers, rabbis, priests, coaches, everybody needs to step up. This has to be a time for change. And I know this microphone's powerful right now because we're playing the 4th best team in the country. I'm not going to have a microphone like this the rest of the year, maybe the rest of my life. And I'm going to be an agent of change with the 13 young men that I get to coach every day and the 2 little girls that I get to raise. But hopefully things start changing because it's really, really disappointing. I'm proud to grow up American. I'm proud to say I'm part of the greatest country ever. And that's got to stay that way. And it'll stay that way if we change. But we got to change.
Joining me now for an exclusive interview, Winthrop University head basketball coach Pat Kelsey. Coach Kelsey, I'm very glad to be able to give you a national microphone once again on this subject. When did you decide that you were going to say that in your press conference?
You know, I've been asked that question a lot over the last 24 hours, and like all Americans, my world came to a screeching halt on late Friday morning. We were on our way to Athens, Ohio, up I-77, and our bus broke down on the side of the highway, which is a whole other story. And a couple of our players came to the front and said, "Coach, check Twitter. There was just another school shooting." And my heart just sunk, and I'm thinking, man, not again. And you're thinking, you know, a high school or something like that, which is just as bad. Don't get me wrong. But when we found out 15, 20 minutes later, when one of my assistant coaches said, "Coach, it's worse than you think. There's 20 kids dead, and it's a kindergarten class. It's 5- and 6-year-olds. And everything came to a screeching halt. There was a shot up my spine, and I froze in my tracks, and I couldn't move. And I got unbelievably emotional. And I think the entire world, not only the entire world, but obviously the entire American public, I think, had the same sentiments I did. And it struck home, especially with me, because I have a 5- and a 4-year-old. And, you know, 4 or 5 hours prior, I was sitting at the breakfast table with my 4- and 5-year-old, and my wife put pancakes in front of them, and they put their little Hershey Kisses in the shape of a smiley face, and they were drawing pictures for me that I could take on the road during a 5-day road trip where we had to go play 2 games, and I wasn't going to see them for a while, and they were on their way to school, and they were marking off their list on their Christmas countdown to Christmas Eve. And when I sat there, all I could think about were those 20 families that had those same breakfasts that morning with their 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds. And they had the same pictures drawn for them and the same Hershey Kisses and the smiley faces on their pancakes. And the next time they saw their children, they were identifying their bodies. And I couldn't shake it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. We had 2 big-time games to get ready for, Ohio University, which we won and played very well, and then Ohio State, which we didn't win but played very well. But every second, every waking second where we weren't concentrating on our game preparation, that's all I could think about. And when I walked into that press conference after we played Ohio State, it struck me the number of people in the room. You know, we're at Winthrop in the Big South, and we're not Ohio State. We're not the Big Ten. We're not the 4th best team in the country. Our press conferences have maybe 1 camera and 1 reporter. But when I walked in, there was 25, 30 people in this room, more cameras staring at me than maybe I'll ever have staring at me for the rest of my life. And, you know, it struck me as they asked me about the game, and they said, you know, tell us about stopping Aaron Kraft and Deshaun Thomas, and how'd you hold Ohio State to 65 points? And I answered the question because that's my job. And then at the very end, you know, they asked me if I had anything else, and And it was almost divine intervention. I just said, yes, you know what? I do have something else. And I think I recognized the moment and the power of that microphone. And I said what was on my heart, what was in my, it was emotional, but it was on my heart. It was what I was thinking about the last couple of days. And I have been overwhelmed over the last 18 to 20 hours of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails that I received and text and ats on Twitter from people that I've never met before, just saying, Coach, I really appreciate what you said. You said exactly what I'm thinking. And I'm not anything great for having said it. I just had the opportunity, and I had that microphone, and I spoke from my heart. An American citizen, a kid that grew up in what I think is the greatest country in the history of civilization. And I'm scared out of my mind that when I'm gone, the society that my little girls are going to live in is not that same great society that we know. So I said it in my press conference, you know, I don't know the answers. I'm a little bit ashamed to admit maybe it's my civic duty to be more responsible and to do more homework to understand what those issues are. I'm not there yet. I just do know that I'm scared that there's been a major deterioration in basic core values of what's right and wrong in the fabric of American society. And, you know, I'm not the type that's going to push my religion on anybody else, but I know one thing. There was somebody that walked the earth 2,000 years ago that set the ultimate example of how to live and how to treat people and how to lead. And that's who leads me. And if we follow that example, I think all will be right with the world.
Pat Kelsey, I know I'm speaking for this audience tonight. I think we all strongly believe that you performed your civic duty nobly when you decided to speak out on this. Thank you very, very much for joining us tonight, Coach.
Thanks for having me.